Hello and welcome to today's tutorial, which is the new grass system in Skyline version 1020. This is a new feature and is a beta feature, but I'll give you a quick run through of how to use it. The first main thing is, in order to use the ground coverage system or the grass system, is you need to use a terrain. So let's create a terrain. Okay, with the terrain created, go to the plugins menu, Skyline Game Engine Editors, Skyline Ecosystem. This will add a new panel onto the last tab of the right side. Okay, now go to your Asset Manager, go to your System Library, go to your Materials, Nature and Grass. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'll be using Grass 035 as it looks the best. Simply drag and drop onto the Ecosystem Editor. And you'll notice that you instantly have small bits of grass appear. There are a couple of property tweaks that still need done when creating grass layers. However, we can just get default properties by just simply scrolling on the width and the height. And as you can see, we now have grass on our terrain. This will scroll infinitely across the terrain. Okay, so we want to make this look even better. What we can do is we can set our density to 1, which is default, then we can set it to 2, and you can set it to increasing amounts, which will give you denser grass at the cost of performance. So let's start with a density of 2. Let's set our maximum height to 0.7 meters and 0.4 meters as our minimum. And we'll set our min width to 1 and our maximum width to 1. Tile size is the actual size of the square patches, which is what makes the grass system up. As you can see, there's 2 little patches, or 3 patches here. Decreasing this will make the patches smaller, which if you've got a large field of grass like this, it's better to have a lower amount. But if you're going to have a further reaching distance, so using far distance setting to 250, that's a lot of patches. So increasing the patches can just ease off the CPU usage. Let's just reset them back to settings. Okay, so let's run through some of the properties. Yeah, you can cast shadows, which if you then rotate the sun, you can see that all the grass is casting shadows. If we turn off visibility, you can then remove it from the scene for that time. Okay, so the next one we can look at is the layering. So if we go to somewhere where there is a rock face, and we go, well, grass shouldn't be growing up the side of the rock, it's a simple solution. Simply click layer 1, and now the grass has taken the terrains layer from this panel. Doing the same with any of the others will give you the same result. So if we want to get it so it's on the rock face, we can simply select layer 4, and now the grass is only on the rock face. The problem with cross quads is when you look down, you don't see the ground, or sorry, you see the ground too much, and it doesn't look like you have any grass in the scene. To solve this, we've actually added the ability to use custom meshes. So if you select the custom mesh tab, this extra section appears. If you click the choose mesh button, and let's go to system library and go to models, sorry, nature, ground cover, grasses, and choose new grass mesh default. Now we'll have grass that looks good from top down. However, it is slower because there are more polygons per grass bit. But you can actually go into a modeling program and make your own. As long as it's using one submesh and less than 65,535 indices, it should load in and work. Let's just check the scale of this grass against a player. So let's increase our density so we can get a good looking scene. Okay, so the next thing is, well, let's add some flowers on top. So let's go back to the asset manager. I'm going to choose flower 036. I'm going to drag that onto the grass ecosystem. And the first thing you'll notice is no grass appears. Only the first layer added to the grass system covers the entire terrain. The rest don't show anything and need to be painted in. We can use the brush system to add that grass. But before we start spraying, let's just reset these properties so we can actually see the grass appear. The cool thing about the brush is we've built in the ability to actually edit the height. So as you can see, you can paint the grass in and it grows out the ground, which means you can have varying height across the terrain for certain pieces of vegetation. Again, if I wanted to cover the entire terrain but only on the grass layer, I choose layer 1, click OK, and now we have flowers across the terrain. Let's set cast shadows to true. Please note, cast shadows will slow it down, and it's only recommended on computers that have higher graphics cards. Right, let's lower the density. You'll notice at times that it can look a bit regimented or the same thing. It's because each patch of the grass is used all over the terrain but rotated by 90 degrees through 360 degrees just to give it a slight variation. The reason it's done like this is because we are using instanced grass. Instancing allows us to use only the cost of one patch for the entire terrain. And of course, all the grass meshes for the one LOD get placed into one draw call, which improves performance. So let's lower the height of this grass, the flowers. And let's just increase the density a bit. Okay, so when you come to optimizing your game, because grass is rendering so many polygons and sending so much data through to the actual GPU, you can lose performance very quickly. So this is why we have the far distance. If you don't need something to render that far, don't make it render that far. So as you can see, this is only now going to render up to 10 meters away. But if we set this to say 25, we set our grass to say 50, you can get shorter or closer vegetation and keep up performance. But of course, if you do want to have far-reaching grass, that is also not a problem. Which brings me to the next thing. The grass is very dense at the distance, and as you can see, my performance is starting to reduce. If you come to scene settings and look at LOD bias, we have our setting set to 100. If we change that to 1, the grass has reduced significantly in the distance for its density, and our performance has also increased. This is quite important when dealing with grass. Okay, let's add a different type of patch. So we will add some form of bush sort of thing. Oh, these are the grasses that we're using, which you'll find in System Library Textures, Vegetation, Simple Grasses. Oh, we'll just use this yellow one for now. So if we go back to the materials, and it should be flower 065. There we go. We drag that on. Okay. So this one we want to have more like bunches of grasses or ground coverage rather than covering everything. So if we look at this to begin with, this is what it looks like. If we reduce it to say 0.1, because adding custom meshes, because you can have more vertices, if you go over the limit it can crash at the minute, as this feature is still in beta. So if we go to custom mesh, choose mesh, come to System Library, Models, Nature, Ground Cover, Grasses, and let's choose New Grass Mesh Default Patch, and now you'll see that the grass is adding very much more in patches. If we set the tile size to 16, and let's go set it over all the area, and now we have bunches. Okay, let's just reduce this so we have less. Another cool technique is if, say, we wanted to have a path going across the top of this terrain and we don't want grass on that path. If we come to the paint there, for now you have to come and select the brush again, otherwise you may crash it due to the ecosystem sharing the same decal system for the brush as the main terrain painting and editing. So once you've selected your brush, come to paint, select your grass, select the remove, get the size brush you want, and let's just increase our density. Okay, so if we now go and remove the grass across the top of here, we can easily make the grass conform to this new path by just reselecting the grass layers and reapplying the terrain layer. And now we have a path with no grass on it. As simple as that. To get good quality looking grass in an outdoor environment, I found that using a lower ambience, so you decrease the actual bounced or ambient light in the scene, you can get some really nice looking grass. If we then rotate the light, you can see that the terrain shadows, which are new in this version also, are also affecting the grass. So let's just drop our ambience just a bit further so you can see. As you can see, now it says only affecting the lit areas. Of course, you can use your own materials and your own textures and everything you want for your scene. It's not a problem. But that's how easy it is to make the grass. Oh, yes, of course. If you want to remove grass from a certain area, select the brush, activate it. Left click will raise grass. Shift left click will reduce grass. It will reduce the height and then it will eventually remove it at the same time as well. So if we set this so it's game height, like a lot of games do use, as you can see, the larger the grass you've made, the less density you require because the actual texture covers more of the screen. So if we now set this to 2, we've got less grass rendering and we have a much nicer looking floor coverage, and we can remove. If we look closely, as I click, the grass actually raises, as shown with the previous one. In some modern games, there's been some additions where they've got like tall, large pieces of grass. So we can draw large patches by just adding another layer. Okay, so this time we're going to set this to 2. We'll leave it as a cross quad because it's more performance effective than actually rendering your own custom mesh. And we'll set the height to 1 and say set the max to 1.2. We'll set the width to 1 and 1. We're not going to add it to the terrain layer. And this time we are just going to raise it up and paint it in manually. Where you don't want it, just use the shift and left mouse button, and you can remove it. Left mouse button to add it. Okay, this brings me to the next part. This is looking very white when looking towards the light angle, and this is actually due to the specular. Because the grass is using PBR, it's following the normal standard material pipeline. Hence you can drag on the materials and that's what's rendered into the scene. So let's make our own grass material then, and I'll show you how to set up your grass, or your material, sorry. Let's choose a mesh that we can actually apply it on. Let's go to the Asset Manager. Let's go to our textures. Let's go find a new grass that we can use. Okay, we'll just use one of these. I'm sure you know by now how to create a material and use alpha reject to create the actual geometry. Alpha. So if you drag on this material onto here, you'll see that the grass comes in onto the object. If you right click, edit material, the first setting you want to change is the material repeat mode, and you want to change this to clamp. This stops it from wrapping round and stops the top line appearing on the material on a quad, which can look very bad. Then come into the second tab onto your base layers, and if you just lower your specular and lower your Fresnel or Fresnel, and of course I'm sure you've already got this alpha reject enabled, which lower the number, the faster in performance it is, but the worse quality it can have. So setting up your texture well beforehand will save you a lot of problems. And of course you want to have double-sided enabled. And that's all there is to the material. You can use normals, you can use specular maps, you can use the standard material pipeline and it will still apply onto the floor. However, please note that the grass, all normals point directly up. The reason for this is that the lighting looks a much smoother, and we then can apply the actual terrain's normal map as you can see here to give it the back of the hill look with lighting. So let's now also please note that there is a crash at the minute if you add a material onto the grass panel and then try to edit it. It may fail. So it's always best to set your material up, delete it from the scene so it's unloaded, and then we can go grab it, drop it in, set the settings, and have that over the terrain. And there we go. Now we have other bits of grass in the scene. You can quickly get a dense grass scene very quickly, and it can look good very quickly too. There's not much more I can cover because that's basically it. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope to see some of your grass scenes soon. Okay, thank you.